Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we're talking about all the home teams. The Tulane Green Wave, the LSU Tigers, the New Orleans Saints, and New Orleans Pelicans. We've got a great panel to break it down as always. Mike Fazende of Fazende on Football podcast, and also joins me every Friday on my radio show. David Grubb of CrestledySports.com are on our panel tonight. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming down tonight. Mike, we start with you.
Eric, my man.
Tell the folks a little bit about your podcast. Tell them about
Fazende Football podcast. You can get it on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts. Just go to the search engine and search Fazende Football Podcast. It'll come up. And I got this guy every week. I'll visit you and annoy you for about an hour every Friday.
About an hour and a half.
And
we've expanded that.
Just two old friends talking about something that we absolutely love.
Yep.
And it's a blast.
No doubt about it. Again, that's noon to 1.
Well, you're old.
Every Friday. Well, he's old. Well, actually, I'm old. A little bit. David Grubb, welcome back. Always good to have you, my friend. Talk about a little bit about CrestledySports.com.
Yeah, I mean, this is prime time for us. High school playoffs going on, and we heavily cover that. Of course, I'm covering LSU football, LSU basketball, and the Pelicans. If you want local coverage, we're the people who do it.
That's a great website.
Oh, I check it every day. I mean, I tell you, it's part of my favorites. I mean, it's one of the websites when I get ready for the show. I always check it. Great writers, incredible writers, and you're one of them.
Thank you.
That and the Fox 8 app. Sports app,
Yep.
Final Play app is the two
Right.
go-to. My son works for Fox.
Yes.
But it is an excellent app.
Yep, no doubt about it. Let's start off with Tulane. Tulane getting ready to take on Houston tonight. Tulane is 5-5. They're 4-2 in the American, coming off a 24-18 win over ECU. They've won 3 in a row now. Tulsa, South Florida, ECU. McMillan as quarterback. The LSU grad transfer is 3-0 as a starter. And, man, they are playing some pretty decent football right now. Defense last week, and the defense been getting better every single week, had a record 20 pass breakups for East Carolina. That is stout. Now, again, tonight they'll be without Patrick Johnson, their stout linebacker. He's out for targeting. He'll be out the first half. But they get a little bit of a help here because Ed Oliver, the defensive tackle for Houston, who is expected to be a top 10 pick in the draft, he won't be there. But if Tulane wins one of the next two, they are bowl eligible. They win the next 2 games tonight and then the finale at home against Navy. And they have an opportunity to be in the American Athletic Conference Championship game. Now, again, they need some help, partly for what they did this year. SMU has to lose one of their last 2 games. But, man, what a change, because I'm going to tell you right now, and I said on this program, also the radio show, before the Tulsa win, I threw the dirt on them. It was over. There was no reason to talk about Tulane anymore because, again, they didn't give you any reason to talk about it.
Right.
All of a sudden, they have rebounded. Your thoughts?
I'm the same way. I was disappointed in the opening game where they had the Wake Forest game, and then I was disappointed in UAB, how they lost to that one. And it just seemed like that they were the same. It was the same old thing with Tulane. But they've caught on to something, and when McMillan has come in, he's now more than just a running threat. He's also a legit passing threat. It's elevated Tulane's game on offense, and Tulane's defense the last few years has been pretty good. They've always had good defensive backs and pretty solid defensive line, and some good linebackers. So it looked like they're putting it all together. But if I was Tulane, all that stuff about a bowl, about conference, playoff,
games.
whatever, just worry about tonight. Worry about the next play, worry about this game, and then let everything else take care of itself. And I think they can do. I mean, it's going to be a tough game.
Tough game.
But it's good that Oliver's not playing. That's going to help out. I just think I'm extremely happy that Tulane is finally looks like they're turning the corner. But let's see what happens tonight.
Yeah, it's big. Again, the quarterback for Houston, King, 2,900 yards, 35 touchdowns this year, only 6 interceptions.
Yeah.
6 interceptions. And again, he's a converted wide receiver, but he is a great athlete but can throw the football as well. And they got some weapons on Houston's team.
I mean, that's a team that puts up points
like
a pinball machine in the Houston tradition. This is what they've done since the 80s. But their defense is pretty bad. So without losing a star player like that, they've been giving up 40 points a game recently. And Tulane, the good thing is that they have not turned the ball over a lot. You have to, with the defense that they have, they've been a bend but don't break. Mm-hmm. They've given up some yardage, but they've not given up the points as of late. So against Houston, they've got to keep them out of the end zone, obviously, and not turn the ball over, give them short fields to work with. And McMillan, the great thing about him is that you've seen some progression in his passing. Mm-hmm. The first 2 weeks, he was pretty much just limited to making a quick throw.
Yes.
Last week you saw the big plays. Mm-hmm. I mean, 12 completions?
Right.
And he had over 300, almost 350 yards.
Right. And as he gets more and more comfortable.
I mean, this is a guy who hadn't taken a snap in more than 2 years.
Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, it's a shame that he's a senior. He couldn't have this year and then going into next. But I tell you what, I mean, he's been a difference.
Yeah.
He's been a difference. And the more he gets comfortable with that offense, the better they play.
And then pounding the running game, too.
Yeah, I mean,
getting over 200 yards a game and getting the yards per carry that they're getting.
Yeah, they could always run, but they didn't have a quarterback who was a threat to throw the ball. Right. I mean, Banks was good, but he just wasn't that consistent threat to be an accurate passer.
Well, especially in the clutch.
And it's a turnaround for them because, again, all of their hopes really that hung on Banks this year. I mean, I've said it a bunch of times. It's a little bit of a cliche, but, they were looking for him to play like Superman. He played like Clark Kent. And he did. He did play like Clark Kent. But, again, a coup for them to be able to get McMillan, coming from LSU as a grad transfer, get him up to speed quickly. And now, again, when things kind of falter with Banks, where you didn't really feel like you had some backups because the guys you have back there, again, have no experience at all, zero. Again, you're talking about freshmen coming in. That gives you an opportunity to, again, play this guy. And so far, he's played pretty well. Now, again, it helps. There's not really a book on him right now. Let's see what Houston does. But, it's a big game. They get past Houston. Then they got to take on a Navy game. You made a great point before we started. Navy, even though they're down, that wishbone offense, again, that's something you have to prepare for.
And they're always a team that gets Tulane trouble. The military academies, they run the Army and Navy run the wishbone, and they always have someone who excels, a quarterback who excels at that option, that triple option or zone read, and it gives any team fits, but it's especially a team that isn't used to seeing it. Now I think Coach Fritz, he understands how to defense it a little bit, or probably a lot, but Navy's just one of those teams, man. You think, I don't know if it's a psychological thing when you go in there, this is a military school, we should have no trouble with them. But they are tough, man, and they're older guys. Right. They're not like young college kids.
Yeah, they're no early, guys leaving early, and then the discipline that they play with.
The discipline. They don't make mistakes.
They don't make mistakes.
They're not going to beat themselves.
Right.
Guys, we wish Tulane nothing but luck tonight. Hopefully, again, they'll get this game tonight, and of course next week, and then who would have thought? A lot of people a championship game. Wow.
A lot of Tulane fans in the area. Tulane's been down so long.
Right.
It would be nice to see him start to turn that corner.
Right.
And lay the groundwork for next season.
You thought Fritz was going to do it this year. It didn't look like it by the halfway point. You thought, okay, maybe it's one more year. They turned the corner a little bit.
Well, let's see what happens.
And look, offensive line is young. Defense is young for the most part, except for on the back end, so we'll see what happens. Let's shift gears to LSU. 8-2, 24-17 winner over Arkansas. They're still 7th ranked in the nation in the college football poll. They dropped again to 10th in the AP and also the coaches poll. Let's talk first of all, John Emery. Again, the recruit that again has verbally committed to LSU was a Georgia verbal commitment. Flopped from Georgia to LSU after the Georgia beatdown up in Tiger Stadium. Everybody's talking about this guy is, he's a top back in the state, one of the top backs in the entire nation.
Oh, no question about it. LSU has the number one player in the country committed in Stingley. And they have Emory, who's a top 15 player, I think top 20, top 5 running back. So, I mean, the offensive lineman they have is really good, top 20, 25 player. But someone pointed out to me, and I'm excited that Emory committed to LSU. If you're an LSU person, because he was a really good running back that you hated to see leave the state, and much less go to another SEC school. If you're going to go to an SEC school, why don't you just go to LSU if you're from Louisiana? Mm-hmm. That's what most people feel. But, I look back at it, you got to beat Alabama. You got to figure out a way. And LSU's had some great running backs, Fournette, Geis, and they still couldn't beat Alabama. So while I'm glad they're getting guys, skill players like that, the offensive line, they have to keep getting offensive linemen, and they have to find out a way to get a really good game-changing type quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. You love to keep. Obviously, he feels like he's going to have some playing time. Nick Brissett and Clyde Edwards-Helaire have done a very good job this year. But neither one of them is a game breaker. They're dependable backs, guys that you can hand the ball to. They don't fumble, but they're not going to give you 67-yard runs. So the potential is there for him to get some playing time early. So I think it's a good decision for him in that part. But yeah, LSU needs more offensive line help. You hate to see the way it came out of Coach Orgeron's mouth after the Alabama game,
yes.
And say it that way to his team. But we all knew that. That was something that didn't really need to be said.
Yeah.
If you were watching the games, you knew that the line has not been strong this season. Right. So until they get that addressed, you're not closing the gap on Alabama.
David, let me ask you about the line right now, because when you look at this line, a lot of youth on this line. Is this a line that can be built over the next couple of seasons to compete with Alabama, or is this a situation where they have to recruit nationally and they have to be able to match Alabama with a 5-star offensive lineman, a 5-star defensive lineman in order to compete?
They need the best of the best. It doesn't seem that LSU's. When was the last time LSU produced a high-end offensive lineman? And they used to produce that on a pretty regular basis. So you're not seeing the kind of protection up front. Going back to even when Fournette, his last year at LSU, the line was already starting to deteriorate. So, this has been a consistent problem. LSU needs to get talent because you'd rather have more talent than you need and start weeding that out than to be in the position they're in right now where they just don't have the depth of guys that can compete at that position. And against Alabama, you've got to be 6-7 deep on, from your top 5 guys, you've got to have a backup at every position to be able to move guys in and out. And then on the defensive line, they have not had an outstanding player on the defensive line in years as well.
Mm-hmm. The reason why I ask is, again, because I keep hearing about the ability of this coaching staff to coach up their players. And again, we got rave reviews on the offensive line coach this year coming in based on what he's been able to do in terms of jumbling this offensive line all season long. But the question is, with the experience these guys have gotten, are they in a good place going next year and the following year, or is this a situation where you say, man, these guys are good, but we need to go out and get better. They need to go out and get better players.
Look, for the team, anybody but Alabama, they're doing pretty good. They beat Georgia. They had Florida beat in Florida, but Alabama's just another level. And Coach O said it wasn't scheme; it was just players. No, it was scheme too. You can't go into an Alabama game doing what you've been doing all season when they have a whole season's worth of tape on you and 2 weeks to prepare.
Sure.
Come on, it's Nick Saban. So, and you have to anticipate some kind of wrinkles Saban may do in those two weeks. So while, they need players, LSU didn't get hammered last season in Alabama with Matt Canada as quarterback, a different type of offensive coordinator, a different type of scheme, somebody that makes their defense go sideline to sideline instead of running right at them. And they only scored 10 points, but they left a lot of points on the field. I'm talking about last season in Alabama. Mm-hmm. This season, it was more of almost like a Les Miles type offense where you were afraid to let the quarterback get the ball to him and let him make some plays. The quarterback was afraid to throw the ball to receivers who may look covered, but in college football, when you have 4 or 5 star wide receivers, give him a chance to make a play. Get the ball to the receiver and give him a chance to make a play. And then you say, well, he didn't really have time to really do any of that. He was getting people in his face.
Right.
But I thought sometime I thought Burrow had more time to throw than he actually realized. But I mean, it was just a total domination at the line of scrimmage. I mean, you can't just do what you've been doing against Bama. You got to scheme something different, like what Hugh Freeze used to do at Ole Miss.
And then, what you see is, like you talk about the difference-making quarterback. I mean, LSU has not upgraded really from Danny Etling. You're seeing basically a 50% completion rate.
Exactly.
You get close to 200 yards a game, maybe a touchdown. And they've done that no matter who the opponent has been this year. So you saw the line struggle against Southeastern Louisiana. You saw the line struggle against Arkansas. You've seen the line struggle game after game, especially in the passing game, and they don't sustain drives. LSU has ended up settling for 3 far more times than a program with their talent should.
If it had to have a great field goal.
Yeah, and it's just, I think the thing you talk about schematically is, for all that speed and talent you have on the outside, when was the last time you saw LSU run a crossing route? When have you ever seen them throw a bubble screen, to get the ball into your athlete's hands and just let them make a play? They don't run those plays. And against Alabama, when you know that they're pressuring with just their front 3, as they were able to do, you have to get rid of the ball quickly. You have to get it into guys in space. And waiting on that drop, you're allowing linebackers at a school like Alabama, who always has great linebackers, to sit in coverage, to read you, and to make plays. And LSU just has to find a way to not just go down the field and try to throw it over the top. You've got to move it and move the chains into Alabama, keep them off the field. And that's what other teams have been able to do. You're not going to score 40 points on Bama unless you had Johnny Manziel, that year. But the good thing that you do against Alabama is keep them off the field. You control the clock, and LSU was completely unable to do that.
And I mean, that's the type of things that Hugh Freeze used to do, Gus Malzahn does, and the year in and year out basis. They always have good games with Alabama. They never get run out of the stadium because they have an offense that. They have a up-tempo offense that spreads you out and makes you wears your defense out. And I don't care who you are. If you're tired, it's a great defense. Plays are going to be made on you.
Well, that leads me to my next question. Okay, both you guys are kind of are downplaying the scheme that they have right now.
No, I mean the scheme's fine, but unless you don't plan on beating Alabama every season. Because that's not going to work.
Well, you can't. I mean, again, if you're going to max protect and put one receiver out in a route, you're not going to
against 5-star DBs and linebackers. I mean, it's not going to happen.
I mean, it's not going to work. Do you think that Ensminger will be back?
I think there's a potential that he will not. And I think, for a number of reasons. Number one, I don't think he ever wanted to be offensive coordinator. He had turned the job down before he took it. I think he was more comfortable as a positional coach or that type of place, and he's up in age too. I mean, I think he's looking towards his retirement.
Yeah, he's over 60.
I don't think he wants to be there long term, but there also could just be a demand from the general demand from the Tiger Athletic Foundation.
That's people. 3 coordinators in 3 years for a coach, and as we were talking about before we came on the air, nobody's going after the defensive coordinator because he's untouchable. But it shows lack of stability within the organization, within the program.
Well, I mean, the defensive coordinator, thank God you have him.
Right.
I mean, you're not in any game.
Agreed. I'm not disagreeing with that.
LSU's been pretty good with defensive coordinators.
Yes.
I mean, go out throughout LSU since we've been following them as kids. And it's always been something with the offense. Every few years they have a good offense, but
can Orgeron get away with again now saying, okay, 3rd coordinator in 3 years?
Depends on the name, on who you bring in. It'd have to be a home run.
Who would want to come?
That's the question. I mean, and how much is LSU willing to pay? Because they're not. LSU does not throw out a whole bunch of money in the arms race in the SEC. LSU does not overspend. So who are you going to get for less than? Because you have to pay them less than Orgeron. So even if it's close, you're offering $3 million to a premier offensive coordinator. Who is that going to be? Who'd want that job?
Kendall Browse is the hot name right now. That's the name out there that LSU people think they can bring to LSU. But I think Orgeron wants to stick with Ensminger. But I agree with what he said. If you got to talk somebody into taking the offensive coordinator's job at one of the best football universities in America, then I mean he's had to be talked into doing it. Maybe he just didn't want to, and he may end up saying, you know what? Let somebody else do it. I'll retire. Or I'm going to step and go coach position.
Who wants to take that heat unnecessarily?
Age.
I mean, if you feel like, if you're him and you're just like, look, we're going to go, we may go 10-2. And, the offense wasn't perfect, but we went 10-2 in a year that people thought we were going to be 6-6.
Right.
And let's face it, you're right. I mean, They have pretty much maxed out for what they have on offense. You talked about Brissett earlier, Clyde Edwards-Hilaire, young wide receivers, tight end. That Foster Moreau's the only veteran there, and a quarterback who just started playing in August. He hasn't even been with the team practicing since. I mean, he just started this August. So you could say, well, he maxed out what he has.
Well,
with
being
this
devil's
team.
advocate, then why are you making a change?
But nobody. What we're saying is, you ask me how you beat Alabama. You're not going to beat Alabama with that type of scheme, unless you have
a difference-making quarterback,
Right.
and they have not brought that guy in yet.
Well, how do you attract the difference-making quarterback if you don't have either a legacy of putting great quarterbacks in the NFL, or again having someone there that can develop a quarterback? You got Sean Salisbury screaming from Houston. He wants to get come to LSU and be able to work with the quarterbacks, etc. I don't know how realistic that is, but that's one thing they haven't done. And one thing, Ensminger being a next quarterback, you thought that would be a natural, okay? That he could work with the quarterbacks, develop the quarterbacks. Obviously, we haven't seen that.
He was a quarterback under Charles McClendon.
I get it.
That's a long time
Sure.
ago in a whole other era. And he split time with David Woodley. But, you say, why get rid of him? I'm not saying.
Well, I don't think he's going to get rid of him.
Rid of him.
Move into another position.
I think Orgeron would like to keep him. I mean, that was his first choice. But I'm not sure Orgeron even understands the type of offense. LSU is so capable of running with the skilled players in Louisiana that you can have. And then you see other offenses around the country lighten up the scoreboard.
So what are you looking for, a spread, Mike? Are you looking for a spread offense?
I'm looking for some kind of,
It doesn't have. I don't think it has to be
somebody that can come and take advantage of this talent that you have in the state.
Okay.
You can't keep getting the Leonard
It's been a
Fournette.
pro-style offense for as long as I can remember.
But I mean, like you said, they're
look
max
at it.
protecting all the time, and then you talk about you're not getting a lot of receivers into routes. You're not. I mean, this goes back to Odell Beckham Jr. and
Right.
Jarvis
I mean,
Landry.
you have an
And you
all-pro
talk about,
NFL wide
guys
receivers,
who
and you win
weren't
9
getting
games.
used, and NFL Pro Bowl talent, and it's just not connected because you don't see. It's not just it's when you call plays as much as what you're calling, and it seems like LSU gets tighter to the vest at the wrong times. And I think there's value in getting first downs, and you just don't see that sustainability in their offense of racking out 6-7 first downs on a drive and going on those long, consistent drives, because you end up with a throw from Joe Burrow that sails out of bounds because he's not great at throwing the out. And then you don't get those plays where you need 3 and he picks up 5. You don't see a lot of those throws. So I think it's a lot of situational calling. They do a lot of run on first, run on second. We're in third and long, and now he's pressured and he can't get the throw off. They have to just mix things up. It's not necessarily being crazier and wilder with the offense. It's just are you reading the situations as well?
The offense looked like it was developing week to week, and with it maybe coming to a crescendo against Georgia, but since then, it looks like they've gone into a little bit of a shell.
Well, I thought they played well against Mississippi State, but they just couldn't convert the touchdown.
Right. Well,
They
and
kicked
also
5
it was a
field.
sloppy field.
It was a sloppy field.
Right.
Alabama had a whole season's worth of tape, film, and they had 2 weeks to prepare for you. Arkansas is the hangover game for LSU every season.
Sure it is.
After the Alabama game. And you got to give Orgeron credit for coming about and whipping Arkansas's tail the last 2 seasons after getting physically beat and on the scoreboard to Alabama. And I think this year's game last week, it had the potential to be an LSU blowout, but a couple of guys on defense got hurt in the backfield. Arkansas made a couple of big plays that tightened the game late. And then Brissett, instead of running in for a score, he decided to give himself up to run clock, which I didn't have a problem with whatsoever. Because, let's say he scores, and then anything can happen. They can get a quick score, onside kick, and stuff like that. So, I don't know if the Arkansas game was a lot of people are as bad as a win as people are making it out to be. But, you went to Arkansas. It was cold. It was the Bama hangover. But, another thing is Orgeron and Ensminger made a conscious decision to take away the zone read from Burrow's game, which is what he's really good at, because they didn't want him to get hurt.
I was shocked they didn't do that against Alabama.
To be exposed. I thought that's what they were going to see against Bama.
Right.
And perhaps if they had ran that a few times to get Bama on their heels, and maybe show a little different thing here and there, they could have had more success. But I'm with you. I was completely surprised. Understand why they didn't do it. They didn't really need to do it up until the Bama game. And Burrow picked his spots when he needed to run. But he's his own read guy. I mean, he can play his own read in the RPO, but they didn't want to expose him to injury.
I don't think that would. I mean, he's getting hit anyway. That's the thing. Yeah. It's like it's not that he's not getting hit.
And he said, "I'm not going to slide."
I mean, yeah. What's the difference between getting crushed in the pocket or taking a hit out in the field?
Right. Guys, they are 8-2. They got a chance at a 10-win season. They got a chance at a New Year's Six bowl game. Again, they're the guys that are forecasting this are saying either the Sugar or the Fiesta, depending on how things kind of shake out. If they lose, they're probably in the Peach Bowl, which is a real downer after this season. They have to end up the Peach Bowl. Then leads us to the next question, which is an Ed Orgeron extension after maybe a 10-win season. He's got 2 years left on his deal. The buyout is $5 million in 19, $6 million in $6 million in 19, $5 million in 2020. He's got $3.5 million a year guaranteed. In the research I did today, he's as far as coaches go in the SEC, he's the 14th ranked coach in terms of contract and what he's making per year. They just settled Les Miles' deal today. Les Miles left $5 million on the table, took a $1.5 million buyout. They still owe Matt Canada money. I'm sure there's some other coaches out there they still owe money to that they're still paying off. Again, the university's not paying this. The TAF is, but it is what it is. What do you do with Orgeron? I mean, it's not like every university in the country, is even because Ed Orgeron won 10 games at LSU, is coming here, beating down the door saying, Ed, we want you as our head coach. The leverage is with LSU. Some are saying that you have to give Orgeron an extension simply because of recruiting. Okay, that you can't allow other programs to negatively recruit, saying you only got 2 years left on your contract, he's not going to be here. But they were negatively recruiting before when he had 5 years on his contract. Right. Okay, because they're saying that he wasn't up for the job, he couldn't do the job. All of a sudden, again, he's proven he can do the job. What's the situation here, David? I'll go with you first on this one. Do they extend him? If they do, is it a favorable contract for LSU? And when you say that, it comes down to the buyout on that, okay? Or does Orgeron, because he won 10 games, or if he wins 10 games this year, he has the leverage?
I think if you're LSU, you have to decide what your ceiling is. You know, do you expect LSU to be in the hunt for a college football playoff spot every year, or do you expect LSU to be very good from year to year and occasionally
as a program,
pop up? Right. So that's what LSU has to decide. What are we as a program? Are we a program that occasionally pops up and becomes a team that threatens?
I know what the fan base wants.
The fan base expects a playoff every year. But that's not been the history of this program anyway. That's never been the history of the program.
But is it realistic with Alabama being the juggernaut that they are?
Not as long as Alabama is what it is. Okay. I mean, you occasionally, like Auburn has done every once in a while, you occasionally hop up, you beat Bama, you get an 11 or 12 win season, put yourself in position to win a championship. But as long as Bama is what it is, it's going to be, I mean, like you're hoping that 1 out of 3 years you can beat.
I mean, couldn't you at least the expectations right now, being they got to be the second best team in the SEC with, again, the opportunity to be able to one day knock down the door on Bama?
And it's tough when when the East is still so top heavy.
Right.
We thought Kentucky was better. They're not. I mean, just things like that have happened. So yeah, I mean,
you extend him?
Not long. It wouldn't be long. I'm not giving him a 5-year extension or something like that.
It's not up to him.
Yeah, I mean, but if it were me, it would be a shorter extension, just enough that I know maybe another full recruiting class can be lined up. Right. But I can get, like I said, a reasonable buyout that I could get out from under, because there is no competition for that job for Orgeron to be taken from that job. But there are a lot of people who would love to have the LSU job.
Mike, you like myself didn't think that Ed Orgeron. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I didn't think Ed Orgeron was ready for the LSU job. He's proven everybody wrong. With that said, you, like myself, have given him props on what he's done. Mm-hmm. Does he deserve an extension?
Yeah, that's why when you said, guys, he's 8-2, I wanted to make that point, that he is 8-2.
Right.
And he's far exceeded anyone's expectations, including mine. I had him going 8-4 and maybe winning a bowl game 9-4. But I don't know. LSU's his dream job. Right. I don't think he'll demand a wheelbarrow full of money or a truckload full of money.
But probably demand security.
But right? he may say, look, I need some security for the recruiting aspect of it. Also, You don't forget about Jimbo Fisher out there at College Station. He has a lot of inroads into Louisiana. So he's got recruiting people against him coming from both sides.
All these disciples of Saban have inroads into Louisiana.
Right. So, Georgia had Emory committed. That's a Saban assistant.
Right.
So, former assistant. So I would say give him something and maybe have an incentive-laden deal where benchmarks. This is what your salary is up to these wins. If you go to a top 6 bowl, here's your bonus. If you do this, he probably has that now, but maybe kick it up a little bit and increase his base to something that he'd be satisfied. That both, because I don't think LSU wants him to go anywhere, and I don't think he wants to go anywhere. But you're right. You can't have a coach with 2 years left on his contract recruiting one of the best classes ever to come out of Louisiana this year and going forward. So I would say yes to an extension, but I wouldn't give him a Saban type deal or a Fisher type deal because, first of all, it's only one season, and let's let him earn a couple more. There's always after that extension if he comes out next season and lights it up. They win 11 games, and maybe they beat Alabama. Well, then, bam, you can add on to that as well.
Yeah, I think the thing with Orgeron is just the fit has been good, for as far as the LSU community at large. He's always been a great recruiter. He has not brought, you worry some about the discipline issues they had this year. They did have some players, with some discipline problems, but that's going to happen in major college football. Otherwise, the program is relatively clean. So in those regards, he hasn't done anything to lose the job. So yeah, extending him is the natural thing to do. Again, I wouldn't overpay for him,
Right.
But I don't think he wants to leave, and I don't think LSU wants the job itself because you don't want to start devaluing the job at LSU.
Right.
If you keep turning over coaches because of the way that they let go of Les Miles, which still stings a lot of people around the country, and then if you were to let Orgeron go after a 10-win, after producing some quality seasons with what people would view as holes in your roster, then I think you start to diminish the LSU job itself.
You lead me to my point because you fired a guy that won national championship for you, that was winning almost 10 games a year on an average, and you fired him because of the offensive philosophy. You're in the same boat right now with the offensive philosophy. If you got one thing that Tiger fans are upset about, it's the offensive philosophy.
Well, what would you do?
Well, I agree that there's got to be some stability because of recruiting, okay? Right. But I surely would not break the bank. And in any contract that would be given to Ed Orgeron, LSU, it would be in the favor of LSU, in my opinion, okay? It would have to be. And if ultimately he didn't want it, it is what it is at that point.
No, I don't think he would turn. I don't think he'd turn down any kind of extension.
Yeah, there's no
LSU
at this stage of his life,
dream job, and like you said,
right.
you said it. There's no other college beating down his door.
But there is another facet to this.
Available maybe, but
Oliva and Orgeron are tied at the hip here. So you got an athletic director that realizes his job's on the line if this guy doesn't make it either. So again, he wants to give him every opportunity to succeed, as everybody else does. But if you want to look at it realistically, the same question you're having right now about Orgeron is the same question you had about Miles, okay?
And he got a rollover extension every season. That's why his buyout was so tough.
No doubt. That was,
after they won a national
mistake.
championship, that's what he wanted.
They panicked
his
again.
His contract rolled over every season.
Yeah, but he always used another university like Michigan or somebody else's leverage. I don't think Orgeron has that leverage right now. Now, he may next year. Next year, they go out
let's see what happens.
With the recruiting class they have, if he can corral that recruiting class in.
Well, yeah, if you win a top 6 bowl.
And win a top 6 bowl and have the soft schedule they have next year, it may be a different scenario we're talking about. But
listen, there's going to be openings after the season. And if Orgeron's agent is as smart or sharp like Saban's or Miles's was, he'll get his name included into those openings. And then he can say, hey, look, there's a little leverage here. So maybe get the ball moving.
Guys, just quickly, because I want to move on. Take our break it back, go to Saints and Pelicans. All right, Rice, Texas A&M. How do they do?
Obviously, I think they beat Rice pretty handily. Texas A&M, again, you go on the road. You play Texas A&M. They've been unpredictable all season, so you don't know what kind of effort you're going to get out of Texas A&M.
I got a feeling Jimbo Fisher's going to have them ready to play again against LSU. Just simply again because he was basically left at the altar not once but twice by the LSU, and I think he's already mentioned his love for LSU, his love for Baton Rouge. I think he'll have them fired up. And look, this is a lot about recruiting for him as well. Okay, so I think he'll have his team ready to go. But I think it's a must-win for LSU.
Oh, it absolutely.
I mean, I don't think you can. I think everything. I think it mirrors exactly what happened last season. You looked like what a great season. You lose to Notre Dame, and then of course you have the certain defection with the recruiting class, and the whole narrative on the offseason changed. Right now, people are feeling pretty good about this team. Possible New Year's Six Bowl, maybe backing into a playoff. 2019 class looks like it's going to be one of the best, and maybe again you can add to that. You lose to Texas A&M, all bets may be off. You end up in the Peach Bowl.
Yeah, I think it is a dramatic difference for the program, and it's a dramatic difference for Orgeron because his perception changes too. Mm-hmm. Because then you have a loss to Texas A&M, like you said, and that feels like another loss to an inferior opponent. And that's dogged LSU over the last couple seasons. I mean, the Troy loss last year. Right. Then you say, oh, well, you lost to Texas A&M now, a team that lost on the road to a couple of inferior opponents.
And you look at the stock market after Alabama doing this because of the way you beat Arkansas, and of course, even though you had Rice squeezed in there. Mike, what's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the theory about Fisher having his team ready to play because LSU left him at the altar, I don't know how that plays with his players at A&M. It's like, oh, you really want to coach them? You don't want to coach me? That's why you want us to win?
But he'll be fired up is what I'm saying.
No, he'll be fired up, but I think...
It means a lot to Fisher.
It maybe, but I think, listen, his job is A&M now, and they're paying him a lot of money over there, a lot of money.
For a lot of years.
But I don't think they're ready for I don't think they have the talent to beat LSU. I don't think they have the line of scrimmage to beat them in the skill positions yet. Now, he's got a quarterback that he's been developing for the entire season, and he's improving every week, something you don't see at LSU. You haven't seen at LSU since Mettenberger. A quarterback get better each week. It's the other way around. That's why I wanted Fisher so bad at LSU, because he can mold these guys.
Develop quarterbacks.
And it'll never happen. But I think LSU beats A&M. It's going to be a nerve-wracking game. You know, it always is now, lately. But I think LSU's they're deeper and have more talent. And I think they'll beat A&M. They'll beat Rice. And I think they'll end up 10-2. And with a top 6 bowl, and who knows? Something happens in front of them. Maybe an outside shot at the top 4, the playoff.
Yep, they never know.
I mean, you got some. You're at number 7 as a 2-loss team,
right?
And I mean, that means only 3 teams ahead of you have to lose. Because they all got 1 loss, right? Except
and
for
some of you may
Notre Dame
be able to
Alabama.
jump even without them losing because of the strength of schedule.
Right.
Strength of schedule.
Yeah, with the strength. Yeah.
No,
and that's why they're number 7 right now.
Right.
Because of strength of schedule.
Because of strength of schedule, no doubt. And there's a possibility they get back into it.
Even though they lost, they didn't. Even though they had a tight game against Arkansas, it was in Fayetteville, and then it's at College Station.
And they were in control for most of the game.
They were in control, and some things happened late after some injuries.
But a lot of these guys don't watch the game; they watch the score. Okay, which is one of the reasons why they dropped in the polls. Okay, not the college.
It just wasn't pretty. I mean, LSU just wasn't playing pretty football.
Even though Arkansas did come back, they scored 2 quick touchdowns. It was you were up 24 to, I guess, 10 or 7, and it was still like you weren't even quite sure. You kept thinking, man, if they get a quick score, they're right back in the game.
Guys, I want to move on. We'll take a quick break. We'll hear from our underwriters. We come back. David Grubb of CrestlySports.com, Mike Fazende of Fazende Football Podcast are our guests. We'll talk Saints, we'll talk Pelicans, and we'll wrap it up for this Thursday night here on WLAE-TV.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, Mike Fazende of Fazende Football Podcast and David Grubb of CrestlySports.com are our guests. We'll go to the phone lines in a few minutes. Saints 51-14 winners over Cincinnati. They're now 8-1. They're incredible on the run they've been on. Eight straight. Unstoppable offense. They scored on 9 of 10 possessions against Cincinnati. They bring out Ingram now. Ingram has an incredible game, 104 yards on the ground. Again, catches was also involved in the air game. It's been Thomas and Kamara up to then. Mike, your thoughts on this Saints team thus far? I mean, I think, based on what I've seen so far, I think they're the best team in the NFL right now.
I agree. I mean, they're playing the best ball right now.
Right.
Anybody. That offense is unstoppable. And they're still looking to improve it. I mean, they try to get Des Bryant. They just signed Brandon Marshall. Mm-hmm. But the defense is playing good enough. They're getting some stops, getting some turnovers.
9 turnovers in the last 6 games.
Sean said something the other day on your show, and I saw him say it last night on their show on Tuesday, night before last, that the Saints are now at that point where you got to outscore them. And it causes they put a lot of stress on other teams' offense to try to keep up. And then sooner or later, their offense is going to turn the ball over, maybe fumble, maybe foul start on 4th and 1. You know, if the Bengals are playing anybody else, they're not going for it on 4th and 1 from the 48, whatever. They're going to punt, try to pin you back, play field position. But Marvin Lewis was like, it doesn't matter where the Saints are, the 40 or the 10, they're going to drive on you, especially Cincinnati's defense. So he tried to steal a possession.
Yes.
So, it's just that, Breeze is playing lights out, MVP level, Kamara, Michael Thomas, the offensive line is the best in the league, even though they lost Armstead for about a month. This train is going to keep rolling. And I know the schedule's tough coming up, but I don't know. The Saints have met every challenge so far outside of the Tampa game. And when you look at the Cleveland game, which was, oh, man, is this going to be one of those things where they revert? Or are they going to, they win that game. They got lucky, but they won. And then from here, they're on out.
Got a little lucky against Baltimore. Although I thought they would have beat Baltimore if they went into overtime. They got a little lucky with Baltimore.
Okay, but they're on the road in Baltimore against a good defense.
Well, I'm not discounting the
win is a win.
No, I'm not discounting
Those are things that happen when you're having a great season
agreed.
like that.
Agreed. You got to be a little lucky.
I think it's similar to playing the Golden State Warriors in football.
Right.
I mean, in basketball, because teams, the way you lose is by trying to do things that you don't normally do,
Right.
and the Saints force you into doing things that you don't normally do. If you're not a team that can score 35 points, you can't try to be that all of a sudden against the New Orleans Saints. Because, like I say, you keep giving them possessions because you're going 3 and out, trying to throw the ball with them. And defensively, they've been, like you said, good enough. They've not been great, but they've been good enough. And that was a big key at the beginning of the season. We were concerned if they were going to be a solid group. You're getting better play from your linebackers. Secondary has been solid. You're starting to get more pressure up front. And then the addition of Mark Ingram was so important because it means that you can run the clock out. You don't have to rely on getting passes completed on 3rd down. And when you do have to travel, and this team does have some tough road games coming up, when you do have to travel, the ability to run on 3rd down is going to be so important for this team. And in the years where they failed in the playoffs, it's because they couldn't get tough yardage on the ground. It's not because Breeze couldn't complete passes. It's because he was forced to throw 40 times in a game. And when he has to throw 40, they don't win. And when you can control the clock with Ingram and get Kamara some quick carries and things like that, they're a much better team.
That's a great analogy about playing the Golden State Warriors in basketball, because you try to keep up, and you're going to mess up. And Golden State plays good. They play better defense than people realize.
Sure.
And the Saints, the big key to that going 3 and out is that run defense, because now you got them behind the chains. It's a lot easier to play pass defense on 3rd and 8 than it is obviously on 3rd and 5 or less. So the run defense has been a huge, huge factor in the Saints defense, getting off the field and giving the Saints offense more possession.
Guys, I would add to this, and you guys kind of touched on it, the juggernaut of an offense, it's almost the recipe same that they had in 09, okay? Where, again, the offense gets out, they're scoring. It's a little bit different now. It was shock and awe back then because they would score in a millisecond, it seemed like. Now they're going on sustained drives. They're taking the air out the clock, so to speak. But the defense then, because the offense has become one-dimensional, as you guys mentioned, it becomes an arms race. You got to keep up. Well, now all of a sudden, the defensive line can pin their ears back and they can rush the passer.
Right.
The secondary is a little bit better because they know what's coming, okay? So, again, they can take chances, which is one of the reasons why we've seen 9 turnovers in the last 6 games. Because, again, I think that it's gone hand in hand. The defense is better because the offense is putting points on the board. Okay, but they are getting off the field timely. I mean, there have been some times when they just needed to have a stop, and the defense has gotten it. So, look, right now, I think they're playing the best football in the NFL. It's going to be interesting to see again what the Armstead situation is going to be. Bushrod looked good in his first stint playing left tackle. That's a tough spot for a guy that is his age, that has not played all season long, that had a horrible tragedy of losing his newborn, was gone for a few weeks. And now you're throwing him in there and you're saying, and I know they can scheme it out probably for a week or so. You're saying, okay, you're going to have to take these big-time pass rushers they're going to see over the next few weeks. And believe me, they got some big-time pass rushers that are going to be coming to town or they're going to be seeing on the road.
I got to tell you, the Saints offensive line coach has to be one of the best in the NFL. Last season, he had to patchwork it throughout. And it's always at left tackle, sometimes at guard. And the way that they can interchange guys, they made it work. And then you have an added bonus of a Hall of Fame quarterback who knows pre-snap reads and knows when to get rid of the ball and where to go. And that helps the offensive line as well. So it's bad that they lost Armstead, but I think they can keep rolling.
I mean, the key for them is just to get home field. They have to get whatever they have to do. They have to get home field. They don't want to go to Los Angeles and play the Rams. They don't want to go to Philadelphia and play. And not that they can't win those games, but it's just you're adding a level of difficulty. You're increasing the degree of difficulty when you don't have to.
Right. And look, the Dome brings something that a lot of the stadiums don't. The fans are as educated of a fan base as there is out there. They understand quiet during the offense. You know, you can affect the signal card. You can affect the opposing team's offense by the crowd noise within that place. And of course, when you get into big games, that crowd is usually out of control. So again, you have that. It's a true home field advantage in New Orleans, where you might go elsewhere, you don't get that advantage.
I mean, 2011 is a perfect example. I mean, they lost an early game to a bad Rams team. I think Owen, whatever, when they lost to the Rams in St. Louis that season. It cost them home field advantage. They had to travel to San Francisco. And we know what happens. San Francisco comes back on you late. If that game's in the Dome, to me it's a complete. And to me, that team was better than the Super Bowl winning team.
Got to give a lot of credit to Peyton as well. You know, I've been critical to him at times. A few years back, he didn't look like he was engaged and into it. Obviously, that's turned around with his back-to-back great draft classes. Breeze playing at an MVP level. His game plan week to week has been phenomenal.
I think he's borrowed the mentality, not the play call, but of the mentality of what the Patriots used to do for so long, is that they did not game plan, specifically to what we're going to do in general. They would game plan for that opponent.
Right.
And what you expected for them to do because you had seen it on film, that's not what they were bringing to game day, because they had just targeted this team and what they do and don't do well. And you saw that against the Rams, where Sean Payton was very quick to recall where he thought the advantages were against the Rams, not in general, but against that team and the players that they wanted to match up against. So I think that part of it has been a great adjustment. And then for an older quarterback, I don't care how great Drew Brees is playing, you don't want your quarterback throwing the ball all the time. And the Saints had gotten into a bad habit of forcing Drew to throw 40 to 45 passes a game. When he gets down to that 30 to 35 level, it's much, much better for this team. It's better for Breeze. It's better for the offense. It's better for the defense.
If the Saints run for 100 yards, they're going to win.
Great point.
Yeah, and I mean, Payton's having a coach of the year.
He's been incredible. Again, I think he's been re-energized by again the youth of this team and the talent that he has now. The ability to put Hill on the field and to tinker with him. And
that's a whole other element to the offense.
Right. I mean, look.
Amazing.
I mean, who would take the ball out of a Hall of Famer's hands? But he's doing it, and it's been effective.
I mean, this is the arrogance and the swagger is back. This team is now at the point where they feel like you have to play your best just to match up with us. Yeah. Not you have to play your best to beat us. And that hasn't happened probably since the 11th season.
Yeah. Guys, Mike mentioned it. 3 games in 12 days, okay? Back-to-back Thursday nights. I don't know if I've ever seen a team have to play back-to-back Thursday nights before, okay? Then Tampa Bay at Tampa. You got to avenge that loss, right? And then the final 3, at Carolina, Pittsburgh, Carolina at home. Tough stretch. I mean, we thought it was a tough stretch when it was, Baltimore, Minnesota, Washington. Tough stretch down there.
Tampa and Carolina are always difficult for the Saints when they go on the road. They always play. Tampa is always able to slow them down for some reason. And then Carolina, of course, whether it's here or in Carolina, Carolina's been. And I think, I like to tell people this, the most consistent adversary for the Saints has been the Panthers, not the Falcons, over the last decade.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, those aren't easy games. And I think Carolina, they have that dimension that other people don't have in Cam Newton.
Right. If you get good Cam. If you get bad Cam, well,
Well, they've got to have Norv Turner now as offensive coordinator, who's a quarterback whisperer. He's an unbelievable quarterback coach. Everywhere he goes, the quarterback excels. Agreed. And they have their version of Kamara with Christian McCaffrey.
Yes, they do.
And they have really good wide receivers, and they have a Hall of Fame tight end, Greg Olsen. And they have a pretty good offensive line. That's not where Carolina is bad. Their run defense is terrible, and you saw that against the Steelers. So while I think Carolina physically can keep the Saints at bay, I'll keep it close, but in the end, I think the Saints, here again, they'll try to keep up scoring pace with the Saints, but I think the Saints' offense is just too good for even Carolina, who's really bad on the back end on their defense.
Let's head to the phone lines. Dave is in New Orleans. Dave, welcome. Dave, how you doing?
Hey guys, thanks, Eric. I'm a big fan of the show. I just want to make a couple of quick points on LSU. First point was on Orgeron. I just think you guys have been way too hard on Orgeron from the very beginning. He's not Saban. He's never going to be Saban. He's a different kind of coach than Saban, but I think he's a good fit for LSU, and I think he can do a good job in this program. And I think if you get a program that's a top 10 program year in and year out, your coach is doing a good job, and I think people need to get some perspective on that. And occasionally you'll challenge, occasionally you'll be better, but you're not going to reproduce what Saban did at Alabama. That's just ridiculous, I think. My second point is, I think you mentioned earlier in the show about LSU's difficulties finding the quarterback, and I've always thought that there's kind of a Moneyball situation with that. I think that you don't necessarily need a guy who's 6'4" and runs a 4.5 40. I think what you want is a guy who's accurate with the football. And it seems to me those guys get undervalued. If he's 6 feet or 6'1" and runs a 5 flat, he doesn't get recruited. But when the most important thing about playing that position is not how far you can throw the ball. You can walk in any dorm and find a guy who can throw the ball 60 yards. It's, are you accurate quickly with the football, and can you make good decisions? And I think those guys go under-recruited. They win a state championship, but they don't get any offers because they don't fit the prototypical size and speed requirements that people want in a dual-threat quarterback, and they go begging. And you see them turn up at these small schools and throw for 50 touchdowns. And I always wonder, why the hell isn't LSU getting one of these guys?
Great point.
Great
and I'll
point.
hang up and listen to your response to that.
Fantastic.
I don't disagree.
Dave, great call, man.
Yeah, I don't think we talked about a size profile or anything like that. I think accuracy, again, we've talked about for the last 2 years, LSU's quarterbacks have hovered around 53% accuracy. In college football today, to be less than 60 to 65%, that's a huge problem. And it's not, I don't think you need to have a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback at LSU, but you do need somebody who's going to complete 60% of their passes, plus somebody who's going to, again, it doesn't have to be a dual threat. I don't think it has to be a dual threat. It has to be somebody who's going to make the plays. And they just haven't had a playmaker at quarterback in years.
Yeah, you have to have a playmaker at quarterback. I don't care who you are. You can't just have a game manager, and then what LSU's had somebody who gets you in trouble, who you have to rescue. You have to play better than your quarterback on the defensive side of the ball, on the running game offensive line. So I agree with Dave on that point. On the other point is, you hear that about, nobody beats Nick Saban. Well, Dabo Swinney beats him. Gus Malzahn beats him. People beat Alabama. And to say, we can't beat them, to me, that's a defeatist attitude. I think, why can't you be that school that's doing what they can do? If they can do it, why can't you? And we used to hear it when Bear Bryant, LSU, all they did, they couldn't beat Bear Bryant because nobody could. Well, why can't you beat a program that beats them? So that's my thoughts on that.
Greg is in Houma. Greg, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Greg.
Hey, guys. My question is, we signed Brandon Marshall to the receiving corps for the Saints. So what happens when Tommy Lee Lewis comes back and Ted Ginn Jr. comes back?
Right.
kind of what happens to that receiving core, coming down the stretch, and I'll hang up and listen.
I think it depends on how well Brandon Marshall plays.
Yeah, I mean, it's a low-risk, high-reward option. You're taking in a guy who's a veteran, and really, I think the role for Brandon Marshall will be very defined. It's use your size, convert third downs, be a target in the red zone. He's not there to be a true number 2. He's a placeholder, a veteran, until you get those other guys healthy who can be more explosive, who can make plays. But yeah, if you're expecting Brandon Marshall to come in and make, 40 catches over the last 8 games? No, you're not. I mean, it's...
Mike?
Oh, I agree. I mean, but I think Brandon Marshall can be a step above of what they have now.
Right.
I mean, he's been
Especially in the red
proven to be
zone.
a really good receiver.
Right.
He can still catch.
Right.
And I think the way they're going to use him as this number 2 or 3 guy, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, so do I.
And the other guys coming back, that's just good news for the Saints.
Great news.
That makes
I think the thing too is you don't have to get Michael Thomas so many hits.
Right.
Yeah.
Marshall's a big guy. He can take
He's a
those
big
routes
dude,
across
you're
the,
right.
And
the
they
middle.
don't have anybody going up the seam, and that's a big issue. Dave, I got to get to the Pelicans. We talked a little bit about Anthony Davis before we came on. I'd like you to expound on what your thoughts on Anthony Davis right now. We got about 2 minutes left.
Yeah, something is just amiss with AD, and it's not the elbow, because we talked about this before the show. In the last 6 games, the opposing big men are averaging more than 20 points and 10 boards against him and shooting better than 60% from the field. He's not the primary defender on every one of those plays, but when he's averaging 24-12 and shooting 43%, you expect a bigger gap between your MVP candidate and guys who you play 2 rookies, some journeyman centers, and they're playing at a high level against your guy. The Pelicans are the only team in the NBA with 5 guys averaging 15 points. Anthony Davis is shooting the worst percentage of his career. He's playing the most minutes of his career. He's just not the player that he was last year. I don't think that means he's in decline, but something mentally is not going on. From a night-to-night basis, the effort has not been consistent. The shot-making has not been consistent. The decision-making has not been consistent.
What's up?
I think it's either the combination of the pressure of you go out and tell the world that I'm the best player in the world. That pressure, I think, has gotten to him. He said that he had been playing in his head for a few games before the Chicago game. I think that's absolutely the case. And I think being a leader requires more than just saying it. You have to perform every night. And when you don't, it's not that he has to play the perfect game. He has to be consistent every night. And last night he was 9 for 25 shooting against Minnesota, one of the worst defensive teams in the league. That just can't happen. Especially you see the drop-off within 10 feet to the rim. And if he's not making close baskets,
it's over.
Yep. No, it is. No doubt about it.
You can't bring him out.
We will talk more Pelicans as we get forward.
Well, I just love what he's saying because I've been saying this for
the
5
truth.
years.
He's talking truth. He's talking truth.
That's my boy right
No
there. That's my guy right there, man.
David Grubb, Mike Fazende, thanks so much for being with us.
Always
Certainly
fun.
appreciate it. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV. Also, 9 o'clock on Pelican Sports Television on Friday night. And you catch all the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports at ericasher.com. Catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2 and the iHeart Radio app. Again, you can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. And as always, we ask you to please support the underwriters that support our program. I want to thank our guest tonight, Mike Fazende of Fazende on Football Podcast, David Grubb of CrestledySports.com, and of course, all the WLA production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, also Alex Chacon, Naila Jones, and my director, William Hill. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.